There is a jar of honey sitting in the Cairo Museum that is over 3,000 years old. Archaeologists pulled it from an ancient Egyptian tomb, tested it, and confirmed it was still chemically intact. Still edible, 3,000 years, and it had not spoiled. Not because of preservatives, not because of refrigeration, not because of any technology that did not exist in ancient Egypt. It had not spoiled because of the fundamental chemistry of what honey is. That jar is the best argument anyone has ever made for understanding which foods actually never expire. Not which foods have long shelf lives, not which foods might still be okay after a few years. Which foods are chemically incapable of spoiling under the right conditions. There are 50 of them. And by the time you reach number 1, you will understand not just what they are, but why they behave the way they do, what makes each one worth keeping, and exactly how to store them to get the maximum possible shelf life out of every single item. This list was built on one principle: science over marketing. Every item here has a documented, chemistry-based reason why it does not expire, not a manufacturer's shelf life estimate, not a best-by date that exists because regulators require one. An actual scientific explanation for why spoilage cannot occur under proper storage conditions. Let's get into it. Number 50. Arrowroot powder. Most people have never bought this, never thought about it, and would walk right past it on a grocery store shelf without a second glance. That is exactly why it belongs on this list, because it is genuinely useful and almost universally overlooked. Arrowroot is a starch extracted from the root of the Maranta arundinacea plant, then processed into a fine white powder that looks and behaves almost identically to cornstarch. And like other pure starches, it has essentially no biological pathway for spoilage. Starches are long-chain carbohydrate molecules. They do not oxidize. They do not harbor bacteria. They contain almost no free moisture, which means the conditions that allow microbial growth simply do not exist within the powder itself. Stored in an airtight container away from moisture and humidity, arrowroot powder will remain fully functional indefinitely. There is no meaningful degradation timeline. A container purchased today and sealed properly will perform identically in 20 years. The practical case for arrowroot over cornstarch is worth understanding. Arrowroot creates a clearer, more glossy gel when used as a thickener, compared to the slightly cloudy result cornstarch produces. It thickens at lower temperatures, which means it works in applications where you cannot bring a sauce to a full boil. It is also naturally gluten-free and easier to digest than most grain-based starches, making it a better option for households managing dietary restrictions. In a long-term food reserve built around soups, stews, and sauces made from stored staples, a thickener that works reliably and stores indefinitely is not a minor detail. It is the difference between thin broth and an actual meal. Number 49. Cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is one of those items that sits in a spice rack for years, gets used a pinch at a time, and almost never gets replenished because people forget it exists. That pattern of neglect turns out to be completely fine, because cream of tartar does not expire. Chemically, cream of tartar is potassium bitartrate, a naturally occurring acid salt that precipitates out of wine during the fermentation process. It is a dry, crystalline powder with an extremely low moisture content and an acid pH that makes it inhospitable to bacterial growth. Stored in a sealed container away from moisture, it remains chemically stable for an indefinite period. The only thing that changes over very long storage is that it may form clumps if exposed to humidity, but the clumps dissolve when used, and the product is fully intact. In cooking, cream of tartar serves several distinct functions that are not easily replicated by substitutes. It stabilizes whipped egg whites, dramatically increasing their volume and preventing them from deflating, which is essential for meringues, soufflés, and angel food cake. It prevents sugar from crystallizing in candy making. It activates baking soda, functioning as the acid component in a leavening reaction that produces carbon dioxide to make baked goods rise. And it is the primary ingredient in many homemade cleaning solutions because of its mild abrasive and acidic properties. In a stored pantry, cream of tartar extends your ability to bake a wider range of items. Buy it once. Store it properly. It will be ready whenever you need it. Number 48. Dry ramen noodles. The reputation of ramen noodles in a preparedness context is complicated. Most people dismiss them as a poor substitute for real food, a sodium bomb with minimal nutritional value. That framing misses two things. First, the genuine shelf stability of dry ramen is real. Second, understanding its actual role clarifies exactly when and how it is useful. Dry brick-style ramen noodles, not the foam cup version, contain extremely low moisture content in the noodle itself and very low moisture in the seasoning packet. The noodles are pre-cooked through a frying or air-drying process, then sealed in packaging that limits oxygen and humidity exposure. These conditions give dry ramen a genuine shelf life of 8 to 12 years under reasonable storage conditions, and potentially longer in sealed airtight containers in cooler environments. The foam cup versions do not hold up comparably because the cup material itself degrades and compromises the seal. The nutritional reality is straightforward. Ramen provides fast carbohydrate energy from the noodle, meaningful sodium from the seasoning packet, which has functional value during physical exertion and in situations where electrolyte replacement matters, and very little else. It is not a nutritionally complete food. It is a fast energy delivery vehicle that requires hot water and nothing else. In the context of a practical food reserve, ramen fills the role of rapid preparation. No skill required, minimal fuel consumption, ready in 3 minutes. When you are managing a stressful situation and your mental bandwidth is limited, a meal that requires almost nothing to prepare has value beyond its nutrition label. Store flat brick packets in airtight containers or resealable bags. Keep them cool and dry. Do not rely on the printed expiration date as a ceiling. Number 47. MREs. Meals ready to eat were designed with one requirement above all others: perform under any conditions in any environment with zero preparation infrastructure. No water, no stove, no power, no refrigeration. Hand a soldier an MRE in an active combat environment, and they have a full meal available with nothing but the pouch itself. The shelf life of MREs is temperature dependent in a way that most food products are not. Stored at approximately 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a cool basement or pantry temperature, MREs retain full nutritional value and edibility for 15 years or longer. At 70 degrees, that window narrows to 7 to 10 years. At higher temperatures, shelf life degrades faster. This is not unique to MRE, it is a universal truth of food preservation. Lower storage temperature dramatically extends usable life. Each MRE contains a complete meal, including an entree, starch, side dish, dessert, snack, condiments, and a flameless ration heater that generates heat through a simple chemical reaction, requiring only a small amount of water. This means a hot meal is achievable, even in genuinely austere conditions where no other heat source exists. The nutritional profile is intentional. MREs are engineered to provide approximately 1,200 calories per meal with a macronutrient balance designed to support sustained physical activity. Every component is chosen for caloric density, nutritional completeness, and palatability under stress conditions. The cost per meal is the main limitation. MREs are significantly more expensive per calorie than most other long-term storage foods, but they offer something that cheaper options do not: zero preparation barrier, self-contained heat, complete nutrition, and extreme portability. For a go bag, a vehicle emergency kit, or a specific emergency deployment scenario, they are unmatched. Number 46. Canned fish. Canned tuna, salmon, sardines, mackerel, and anchovies occupy a specific and important role in any long-term food reserve. They are the primary source of complete protein and omega-3 fatty acids in a shelf-stable format that requires no preparation whatsoever. The canning process involves heat sterilization at temperatures high enough to destroy all pathogenic organisms and their spores, followed by a hermetic seal that prevents any new contamination from entering the can. The result is a sterile, sealed environment with essentially no biological activity. The food inside does not spoil because there is no mechanism remaining by which spoilage can occur. Commercially canned fish carries documented shelf life estimates of 3 to 5 years, and up to 7 years or more for low-acid varieties stored at moderate temperatures. The important clarification: these dates reflect a manufacturer's quality guarantee, not a safety threshold. Canned goods that have not been compromised structurally, meaning no swelling, no rust-through, no damaged seals, remain safe to eat beyond those dates. The flavor and texture may change modestly over extended periods, but safety is a different question from quality. Nutritionally, canned fish is difficult to match from any other shelf-stable source. A single 4-ounce serving of canned salmon delivers approximately 24 grams of complete protein, significant omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. Omega-3 deficiency develops measurably within weeks of reduction and is associated with cognitive impairment, mood changes, and immune dysfunction. In a food reserve dominated by grains and legumes, canned fish is the nutritional supplement that makes the rest of the reserve genuinely sustaining rather than merely caloric. Number 45. Canned meats. Beyond fish, the broader category of canned meats, specifically canned chicken, beef, turkey, and pulled pork, extends your shelf-stable protein options significantly and offers cooking versatility that canned fish does not always provide. The same sterilization and hermetic sealing process applies. Canned meats are fully cooked during the canning process, sterile upon sealing, and stable for 3 to 5 years under standard conditions with meaningful safety margin beyond that window. The practical versatility is the primary argument for stocking canned meats alongside canned fish. Canned chicken folds into rice dishes, pasta sauces, soups, and wraps without any distinguishing marker of its origin. Canned beef works in stews, chili, and hash. These are not compromised foods that signal a degraded situation. They are functional protein sources that integrate seamlessly into normal cooking. Rotate your stock. Mark purchase dates clearly. Consume on a first-in, first-out basis. When canned meats go on sale, buying ahead at current prices is an economical decision that requires no justification beyond simple cost arithmetic. Number 44. Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire is one of those condiments that most households buy once, use sporadically, and never think about in terms of shelf life. The chemistry of the product itself makes that neglect entirely benign. Worcestershire sauce is a fermented condiment built on a base of vinegar, the primary preserving agent, combined with molasses, tamarind, anchovies, and various spices and flavorings. The vinegar provides an acid environment that inhibits bacterial growth. The high sugar content from molasses lowers water activity. The salt further reduces available moisture for microbial activity. The combination of these three preservation mechanisms, acid, low water activity, and salt, makes Worcestershire sauce self-preserving under sealed storage conditions. An unopened bottle stored in a cool, dark location holds full quality for an indefinite period. Once opened, the sauce remains stable for several years in the refrigerator and at least a year at room temperature. For a stored pantry, the unopened bottle has no meaningful expiration. The flavor contribution of Worcestershire sauce to a long-term food reserve deserves direct attention. Worcestershire delivers a complex umami depth that is almost impossible to approximate from other shelf-stable sources. Added in small quantities to rice dishes, canned meat preparations, and bean stews, it elevates the flavor profile in a way that dramatically reduces the palatability fatigue that builds during extended periods of eating from a limited pantry. Number 43, fish sauce. Fish sauce is fermented liquid extracted from salted, aged fish, typically anchovies, and it has been used as a primary flavor foundation in Southeast East Asian and ancient Mediterranean cuisines for thousands of years. The reason it has persisted across cultures and millennia is not nostalgia. It is functional flavor superiority. The preservation chemistry of fish sauce is particularly robust. The fermentation process creates a highly acidic, extremely high-sodium liquid with virtually no free moisture available for bacterial growth. The pH is low enough to inhibit most pathogens. The salt concentration is high enough to prevent the remainder. The result is a product that is essentially self-preserving in a sealed container and remains stable for extended periods even after opening. An unopened bottle of fish sauce stored in a cool, dark location remains fully functional for years beyond any printed date. Opened fish sauce stored at room temperature retains quality for 1 to 2 years. The primary change over time is a gradual darkening of color, which is aesthetic rather than indicative of spoilage. The flavor contribution is one of the most efficient in any pantry. A teaspoon of fish sauce added to a rice dish, a soup, or a bean preparation delivers a depth of savory complexity that would otherwise require a much more elaborate ingredient list. For a food reserve where ingredient variety is necessarily limited, a single bottle of fish sauce dramatically expands the flavor range of everything else you have stored. Number 42. Dried seaweed and nori. Dried seaweed and nori, the pressed dried sheets used in Japanese cuisine, belong on this list because they deliver a nutritional profile that is genuinely difficult to find in any other shelf-stable form, and because they have been preserved and stored by coastal cultures around the world for centuries, using nothing more than the simple process of drying. The preservation mechanism is complete dehydration. Seaweed contains very high moisture content when fresh. When that moisture is removed through drying or pressing and heat, the product becomes biologically inert. Without water, bacterial and fungal growth cannot occur. The result is a product that remains stable for years in a sealed, moisture-free environment. Nutritionally, dried seaweed is one of the only land-accessible sources of iodine in a shelf-stable form. Iodine deficiency, which affects thyroid function and metabolic regulation, can develop within weeks to months of inadequate intake. Most long-term food storage plans are completely iodine deficient because rice, beans, grains, and canned meats contain almost none. Seaweed closes that gap. It also delivers meaningful amounts of iron, calcium, magnesium, and several B vitamins, along with unique compounds including fucoidins and alginates that have shown anti-inflammatory properties in research contexts. Store dried seaweed and nori in airtight packaging away from humidity. Moisture is the only enemy. Properly sealed, it keeps for 2 to 5 years or longer with no loss of nutritional value. Number 41. Dried mushrooms. Dried mushrooms, specifically varieties like shiitake, porcini, morel, and chanterelle, carry a concentration of flavor and nutrition in their dried form that fresh mushrooms cannot match, and they store for years under the right conditions. The drying process removes the water content that fresh mushrooms require to support microbial activity. A fully dried mushroom with residual moisture content below 10% is biologically stable. The dense cellular structure of dried mushrooms makes them resistant to humidity reabsorption when sealed properly, which extends their functional shelf life to 2 to 5 years in airtight containers and potentially significantly longer in optimal storage conditions. The culinary case for dried mushrooms is as strong as the storage case. When reconstituted in hot water, dried mushrooms not only restore to a texture close to fresh, but release their soaking liquid as a rich, deeply flavored broth that itself functions as a soup base or flavor foundation. Shiitake mushrooms in particular have been studied for their immune-modulating compounds, specifically beta-glucans, which have demonstrated meaningful effects on immune system function in peer-reviewed research. They also deliver significant amounts of B vitamins, including B2 and B3, copper, and selenium. For a long-term food reserve that tends toward nutritional monotony, dried mushrooms add flavor complexity and genuine nutritional diversity that no other shelf-stable option provides in quite the same way. Number 40. Refined coconut oil. Refined coconut oil occupies a unique position in the cooking fat landscape because of its unusual fatty acid composition. Unlike most plant-based oils, which are predominantly unsaturated fatty acids prone to oxidative rancidity, refined coconut oil is composed primarily of saturated fatty acids, specifically medium-chain triglycerides, which are chemically far more stable under heat and over time. The saturated fat content, which makes coconut oil controversial from a cardiovascular health standpoint, in some research context, is precisely what makes it stable as a stored fat. Saturated fatty acid chains have no double bonds, which means they have no sites for oxygen to attack and initiate the rancidity chain reaction that degrades other oils. Refined coconut oil, which has had most of its volatile compounds removed through processing, has a shelf life of 2 to 5 years at room temperature in a sealed container and significantly longer in cool conditions. For a food reserve, cooking fat is an often underweighted but genuinely critical category. Fat delivers 9 calories per gram compared to 4 for protein or carbohydrates. In a caloric environment where maintaining energy intake from limited food sources matters, fat is the most efficient calorie delivery mechanism available. Coconut oil also handles high cooking temperatures without breaking down, making it practical for frying and sautéing from stored ingredients. Store it sealed in a cool, dark location. Solid at room temperature below 76 degrees, liquid above it. Either state is fully usable. Number 39. Pure ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, meaning butter that has been melted and had its water content and milk solids removed, leaving behind pure butterfat. That single processing step transforms a product with a shelf life of weeks into one, with a shelf life measured in years without refrigeration. The reason comes down to what butter's 2 main vulnerability factors are. First, water. Free moisture creates an environment where bacteria can grow. Removing the water eliminates that. Second, milk solids. The proteins and lactose in butter create the substrate for oxidation and bacterial activity. Removing them eliminates that too. What remains is pure fat with none of the elements that cause spoilage. Properly processed ghee in a sealed container at room temperature remains stable for 1 to 2 years. In cooler conditions, it extends to 3 years or beyond. Traditional Ayurvedic medicines has documented aged ghee stored for decades as having enhanced properties, though the culinary utility peaks within the first few years. For a food reserve, ghee provides the caloric density and fat-soluble vitamin content of butter in a form that does not require refrigeration and stores far longer than any other dairy-derived fat. It handles extremely high cooking temperatures without burning, making it one of the most practical cooking fats for a wide range of applications. Store it sealed, away from direct light in a consistently cool environment. Number 38. Hardtack. Hardtack is one of the oldest deliberately shelf-stable foods in human history. It fed sailors on voyages that lasted years, soldiers in campaigns that stretched across continents, and settlers crossing thousands of miles of roadless wilderness before any modern preservation technology existed. The principle behind it has not changed. Hardtack is nothing more than flour, water, and salt, baked until essentially all moisture is driven out of the dough. The result is a tenacious, hard cracker that contains so little free moisture that bacterial and fungal growth simply cannot occur. There are documented examples of hardtack from the American Civil War era, stored under dry conditions, that remained edible, if not pleasant, to eat over a century later. The preservation is not sophisticated. It is thorough desiccation. The practical value of hardtack is as a calorie and carbohydrate delivery vehicle that requires no refrigeration, no preparation, and no additional ingredients. It is also one of the few foods you can make from stored pantry staples, specifically flour, water, and salt, without any special equipment beyond an oven. Knowing how to produce hardtack from stored ingredients means your flour, salt, and water supply translates directly into portable, shelf-stable food with no further processing required. Store purchased or homemade hard in sealed airtight containers in a dry environment. The only enemy is moisture reabsorption. Keep it dry and it lasts indefinitely. Number 37. Potato flakes. Instant mashed potato flakes are a genuinely underrated long-term storage food, and the gap between their reputation and their actual utility in a practical food reserve is significant. Potato flakes are produced by cooking potatoes, mashing them, and then dehydrating the result to a moisture content low enough that no microbial activity can occur. The result is a powder or flake that reconstitutes into mashed potatoes, with the addition of hot water and, ideally, butter or cooking fat. Sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, potato flakes have a documented shelf life of 25 to 30 years. Without oxygen absorbers but in a well-sealed container, 10 to 15 years is a realistic expectation under reasonable storage conditions. The caloric and carbohydrate density makes potato flakes a meaningful addition to any reserve. Potatoes have historically been one of the most important calorie crops in humans' civilization, capable of sustaining populations through periods of significant food scarcity. Their dehydrated form carries that caloric value without the storage complexity of fresh potatoes. They also adapt readily to whatever seasonings and fats are available, which makes them one of the more versatile prepared foods in a limited pantry. A serving of potato flakes with added butter or ghee, garlic powder, and salt is a completely satisfying and filling meal from stored ingredients. Number 36. Bouillon cubes and granules. Bouillon belongs near the center of this list because of a ratio that is almost impossible to match anywhere else in a practical food reserve. One cube, weighing approximately 4 grams, produces roughly 1 cup of seasoned broth when dissolved in hot water. That same cup of broth, in a commercially produced canned or carton form, would cost 15 to 20 times more per serving and occupy dramatically more storage space. Bouillon cubes are composed primarily of salt, flavor compounds, dried vegetables, and various seasonings, all of which have preservation properties of their own. The extremely low moisture content of the cube prevents microbial activity. The high salt concentration provides an additional antimicrobial barrier. Properly stored in sealed containers away from humidity, bouillon cubes remain fully functional for 5 to 10 years, and often significantly longer, though flavor intensity may gradually diminish. The role of bouillon in a practical food reserve goes beyond simply providing broth. It is a flavor multiplier that transforms the eating experience of everything it touches. Plain white rice cooked in chicken bouillon broth is a completely different meal from plain white rice cooked in water. The same is true for lentils, beans, pasta, and grain dishes across the board. In a food environment where ingredient variety is limited, the ability to meaningfully change the flavor profile of core staples with a single cube is disproportionately valuable. Stock both chicken and beef varieties. Buy in bulk when available. The cost-to-value ratio is essentially impossible to beat. Number 35. Dried popcorn and whole corn. Whole dried corn kernels and popcorn belong on this list because they represent one of the most calorie-dense and longest storing grain options available, and because their utility extends well beyond what most people associate with corn as a food. Whole dried corn kernels with moisture content below 13%, sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, have documented shelf lives of 25 to 30 or more years. This matches white rice and wheat berries in the top tier of long-storing grains. The hard outer shell of the dried corn kernel functions as a natural moisture barrier, protecting the interior from humidity and oxygen exposure. Beyond popping, dried whole corn can be coarsely ground into grits or polenta, finely ground into cornmeal for cornbread, tortillas, and porridge, or nixtamalized, meaning treated with an alkaline solution to produce masa for traditional corn tortillas. Nixtamalization is not complicated. It requires only dried corn, water, and calcium hydroxide or baked limestone, and it transforms the nutritional profile of the corn by making its niacin bioavailable, which is why populations that relied on corn as a dietary staple for centuries developed this process independently. Grits or polenta from freshly ground stored corn is a genuinely filling, versatile meal that requires only the grain and water to produce. Number 34. Loose leaf tea. Tea has been preserved and traded across centuries and continents as a shelf-stable commodity. And the reason is straightforward. Properly dried tea leaves contain so little residual moisture that biological degradation cannot occur under sealed storage conditions. The preservation reality varies by tea type. Green teas, which are minimally processed, are more vulnerable to oxidation and flavor degradation over time and are best consumed within 1 to 2 years. Oolong teas fall in the middle range. Black teas, which are fully oxidized during processing, are more chemically stable and store well for 3 to 5 years, with no meaningful quality loss. White teas, despite their delicate reputation, store remarkably well due to their low processing level and thin, low-moisture leaves. And pu'er tea, a fermented variety produced in Yunnan, China, is deliberately aged for years and sometimes decades, with flavor actively improving over long storage periods. Aged pu'er cakes from reputable producers are traded as commodities with prices that increase with age. For practical preparedness, black tea and pu'er are the most relevant long-term storage options. Store in sealed, airtight containers away from light and moisture. Avoid storing near strongly aromatic foods, as tea absorbs surrounding odors readily. The caffeine, the warmth, the ritual of preparation, and the mild astringency all contribute to the psychological value that tea provides during extended periods of stress or disruption. Number 33. Freeze-dried instant coffee. Freeze-dried instant coffee is one of the highest shelf-life foods in any category. The freeze-drying process removes moisture through sublimation, converting water content directly from ice to vapor without passing through a liquid phase, which preserves the cellular structure of the coffee more completely than conventional drying. The result is a product with moisture content low enough that biological degradation cannot occur, and flavor compounds preserved well enough that the coffee remains genuinely drinkable for far longer than ground or whole bean coffee. Sealed in airtight containers, freeze-dried instant coffee retains full potency and reasonable flavor for 20 to 25 years. This is not a claim made by a single manufacturer. It is a consistent finding across food storage research applied to low moisture, freeze-dried products generally. The caffeine itself does not degrade meaningfully over these timelines. The flavor compounds do shift gradually, becoming somewhat flatter over decades, but the functional product remains entirely intact. The practical argument for including freeze-dried instant coffee in a long-term food reserve has two dimensions. The first is functional. Caffeine improves alertness, supports cognitive performance under stress, and has documented effects on appetite suppression that can help extend the perceived adequacy of a reduced food supply. The second is psychological. Morning coffee is one of the most deeply conditioned daily rituals in most households. In an extended disruption where most normal routines have been eliminated, the ability to maintain this one small ritual provides a psychological anchor whose value is difficult to quantify but real. Number 32. Powdered non-fat dry milk. Non-fat dry milk is produced by spray-drying liquid skim milk at high temperatures until almost all moisture is removed, leaving a powder with residual moisture content typically below 4%. At that moisture level, bacterial growth cannot occur, and enzymatic degradation proceeds too slowly to matter within any reasonable storage timeline. Sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, non-fat dry milk has a documented shelf life of 20 to 25 years with maintained nutritional value. The key limitation is fat content. Because the milk has been defatted before drying, the fat-soluble vitamins A and D, naturally present in whole milk, must be added back artificially. Check labels to confirm fortification. Whole milk powder stores for a shorter period, typically 2 to 5 years, because the fat content creates oxidative rancidity pathways that fat-free products avoid. The nutritional profile is the primary argument for including powdered milk in a long-term reserve. Each serving provides significant calcium, protein approximately 8 grams per cup reconstituted, and vitamins B12 and D. Calcium, the context of a long-term food reserve, is a genuine concern because most shelf-stable staples, grains, legumes, canned meats, provide almost none. Powdered milk is among the most accessible and cost-effective ways to address that gap. It reconstitutes in cold or warm water, works in any baking application that calls for fresh milk, and integrates into oatmeal, coffee, and sauce-based dishes without any noticeable quality difference. Number 31. Powdered eggs. Powdered eggs are spray-dried whole eggs reduced to a shelf-stable powder with moisture content low enough that no biological activity occurs. They reconstitute with water into a product that is functionally, though not identically, equivalent to fresh eggs for virtually every cooking application. The shelf life of commercially packed powdered eggs in sealed containers with oxygen absorbers is 5 to 10 years. In Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers stored in a cool environment, that extends to 25 years or more with maintained nutritional value. The proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals present in fresh eggs are preserved through the drying process, making powdered eggs one of the most nutritionally complete shelf-stable foods available. The functional value in cooking is hard to overstate. Eggs provide structure in baked goods, emulsification in sauces, protein binding in patties and loaves, and a complete quick-cook meal with minimal preparation. In a food reserve where fresh eggs are unavailable, powdered eggs are the direct substitute that allows baking, scrambling, and protein supplementation to continue from stored ingredients. 1 pound of powdered eggs is the functional equivalent of roughly 36 to 40 fresh eggs, making it an extremely space-efficient storage choice. Reconstitution ratio is approximately 1 tablespoon of powder plus 2 tablespoons of water per egg. Number 30, freeze-dried fruits and vegetables. Freeze drying removes approximately 98% of the moisture from food through sublimation, preserving the cellular structure, the color, the flavor, and critically, the nutritional profile to a degree that no other preservation method approaches. The result is a product that is biologically stable, genuinely lightweight, and capable of reconstituting into something remarkably close to the original food when water is added. Commercially freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, packed in sealed cans, or Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers carry documented shelf lives of 25 to 30 years. This is not a marketing claim. It is the consistent result of accelerated aging studies and long-term storage research applied to low-moisture, oxygen-free packaged food products. The vitamins, particularly vitamin C, which is typically the most heat-sensitive and storage-sensitive nutrient, are retained at significantly higher levels in freeze-dried produce than in canned produce, because the freeze-drying process does not involve the high heat treatment that canning requires. For a long-term food reserve, freeze-dried fruits and vegetables address 2 genuine gaps. First, micronutrient diversity. Fresh produce provides vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that grains, legumes, and canned meats cannot replace. Long-term food reserves built without any produce component develop micronutrient deficiencies over extended periods. Second, palatability. Variety in flavor and texture is one of the most underappreciated factors in maintaining morale during extended periods of dietary restriction. A bowl of rice with reconstituted freeze-dried strawberries and a bit of honey is a fundamentally different psychological experience from a bowl of plain rice with nothing added. Number 29. Pemmican. Pemmican is the most calorie-dense, most nutritionally complete, and longest-storing natural food ever produced by pre-industrial human cultures. It was the primary survival food of indigenous peoples across North America, the food that sustained Arctic and Antarctic expeditions in the era before modern logistics, and the product that enabled human movement through environments where nothing else would have kept a person alive. Fun. The composition of traditional pemmican is simple and precise. Dried meat, typically bison or beef, ground into a powder and mixed with an equal weight of rendered fat, sometimes with dried berries added for flavor and micronutrient contribution. The fat seals the protein completely, preventing oxygen and moisture from reaching the meat powder and triggering rancidity or bacterial growth. The low moisture content of both the dried meat and the rendered fat eliminates the primary requirement for microbial growth. Properly made pemmican sealed from air exposure has documented storage life of 1 to 3 years at room temperature and significantly longer under cooler conditions. Accounts from Arctic expeditions record pemmican remaining edible and nutritionally adequate after multiple years of storage without refrigeration. The caloric density is extraordinary. A standard ounce of pemmican delivers approximately 250 to 300 calories, almost entirely from fat and protein, the two macronutrients most critical for sustained function under physical stress. It requires no cooking. It is consumed directly. It is portable, compact, and stable. For a truly comprehensive food reserve, learning to make pemmican from stored dried meat and rendered fat extends your options into territory that commercial food products cannot easily replicate. Number 28. Dried chickpeas. Chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, are among the most nutritionally complete of all dried legumes and among the best storing. Dried chickpeas, sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, have a documented shelf life of 25 to 30 years, placing them in the same elite storage tier as white rice and wheat berries. The nutritional profile is worth examining in detail. A single cup of cooked chickpeas delivers approximately 15 grams of protein, 12 grams of dietary fiber, and meaningful amounts of iron, phosphorus, folate, and manganese. The fiber content supports digestive health in a way that the refined grains and canned meats dominating most long-term food reserves do not. Iron from plant sources, called non-heme iron, has lower bioavailability than iron from meat, but consuming it alongside vitamin C-rich foods dramatically improves absorption. In food reserve that includes freeze-dried tomatoes or preserved citrus, the iron from chickpeas becomes significantly more accessible to the body. Chickpeas also have one of the broadest culinary applications of any dried legume. They can be slow cooked whole, mashed into hummus with stored oil and seasoning, roasted for a crunchy snack, ground into flour for flatbreads and fritters, and added to stews and soups where they absorb surrounding flavors with unusual effectiveness. Their mild flavor means they integrate into both savory and lightly sweet applications without resistance. Number 27. Dried kidney beans. Kidney beans belong on this list because they are calorie-dense, nutritionally complete from a plant-based protein standpoint, and among the best storing dried legumes available. Sealed properly, they last 25 to 30 years with maintained nutritional value. One critical and non-negotiable fact about kidney beans: raw or undercooked kidney beans contain phytohemagglutinin, a lectin that causes severe gastrointestinal illness at the concentrations present in raw beans. This is neutralized completely by boiling the beans vigorously for at least 10 minutes before consumption. This is not a gentle simmer. It is a full rolling boil. Slow cookers and low heat methods do not reliably reach the temperatures needed to neutralize this compound. Boil kidney beans hard for the first 10 minutes of cooking before reducing heat to finish. This is not a reason to avoid kidney beans. It is a reason to understand them. Properly cooked kidney beans deliver approximately 15 grams of protein per cup, significant iron, potassium, and folate, and a very low glycemic index that produces sustained energy release rather than the spike and crash pattern of refined grains. Their robust, earthy flavor makes them the natural base for chili, bean soups, and rice and bean dishes that are genuinely satisfying and nutritionally complete from a plant-based standpoint. Number 26. Dried split peas. Split peas, yellow and green, have two advantages over most other dried legumes. They cook faster because the outer hull has been removed during processing, and they develop into a naturally thick, creamy texture when cooked in liquid, without any mashing required. Both of these properties are meaningful in a food reserve context. The faster cooking matters are when fuel conservation is a consideration. Where most dried beans require 2 to 3 hours of simmering after an overnight soak, split peas cook to a fully edible consistency in 30 to 45 minutes without soaking. The fuel requirement is significantly lower, which extends the usefulness of whatever cooking fuel is available. Dried split peas sealed in airtight containers store for 25 to 30 years. The nutritional profile is strong. Roughly 16-gram protein per cup cooked, a very high fiber content that exceeds most other legumes, and significant iron, potassium, and B vitamins. Split pea soup, made with stored peas, water, bouillon, and whatever aromatics are available from dried onion, garlic powder, or dried herbs, is a genuinely complete meal from stored ingredients that requires minimal preparation skill and delivers real satiety. Number 25. Dried lentils. Lentils have the best combination of properties of any dried legume for practical food reserve purposes, and they deserve a spot higher than many people expect them. The case begins with cooking time. Lentils do not require soaking. They cook in 20 to 30 minutes, making them the fastest cooking dried legume available. The fuel efficiency of this is significant. The preparation simplicity is significant. For someone managing a stressful situation, a food that goes from dry to ready in under 30 minutes, with nothing but water and heat, is meaningfully easier to work with than a food that requires overnight soaking and 2 hours of simmering. Dried lentils sealed in airtight containers last 25 to 30 years. They deliver approximately 18 grams of protein per cup cooked, which is among the highest of any plant food, along with extraordinary amounts of folate, iron, and fiber. Their flavor is mild enough that they absorb surrounding flavors completely, making them the most versatile dried legume in terms of culinary application. Red lentils dissolve completely when cooked, making them ideal for thickening soups and stews. Green and brown lentils hold their shape working in salads, grain bowls, and side dishes. Black beluga lentils have the richest flavor and the most elegant presentation, holding their shape perfectly. Number 24. Dried black beans. Black beans are among the most flavorful and nutrient-dense of all dried legumes, and their visual distinctiveness from other beans makes them a natural addition to a varied long-term food reserve. Like other dried legumes, sealed black beans store for 25 to 30 years, with maintained nutritional value. They deliver approximately 15 grams of protein per cup cooked, significant fiber, iron, and folate, and notable amounts of anthocyanins, the same pigment compounds found in blueberries and other dark fruits, which have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties documented in research settings. The culinary applications of black beans are distinct from other legumes. Their deep color and robust flavor make them the natural base for black bean soup, which from stored ingredients requires nothing beyond the beans, water, bouillon, garlic powder, cumin, and a touch of vinegar. Their thick, starchy broth darkens into a soup that is satisfying and genuinely delicious from purely shelf-stable components. They also work in rice dishes, burritos made from stored tortilla ingredients, and as a side dish simply seasoned with salt and oil. Number 23. Dried navy and white beans. Navy beans and other small white beans, including great northern beans and cannellini, are among the mildest flavored dried legumes, which makes them the most adaptable to a wide range of flavor profiles. Where black beans have a distinct character that defines the dishes they appear in, white beans absorb surrounding flavors almost completely, making them the culinary blank canvas of the legume world. Dried white beans, stored in airtight containers, last 25 to 30 years. Their mild flavor means they work in Italian-style white bean soups, New England-style baked beans with stored molasses and mustard powder, French-style cassoulet made from whatever stored proteins are available, and simple seasoned bean dishes that take on the character of whatever spices and aromatics are added. Navy beans specifically became the basis for canned baked beans, precisely because of their texture and flavor-absorbing properties, meaning a pantry that includes dried navy beans, molasses, brown sugar, and mustard powder can produce baked beans from scratch that are genuinely satisfying. Number 22. Rolled oats. Rolled oats deserve more credit than they typically receive in most preparedness conversations. The combination of long storage life, excellent nutrition, fast preparation, and broad culinary versatility makes them one of the most practical grains for a long-term food reserve. Rolled oats sealed in airtight containers